Oh, it's fine. It's fine. So, how have you both been? You're in the same household, obviously. How have you been getting on?
I've been a bit bored,
Bored.
unfortunately. Yeah, I've been
Yeah.
bored.
Yeah. What
Just
you
miss.
have? Go on.
I've been all right. I've just kind of spent the last week mainly on kind of uni work.
Mm.
So actually, it's been quite, in some respects, good to kind of nice to be home and looked after a bit to try and get through some of that uni work. So I've
Yeah.
been all right. I've had quite a lot to focus on, I guess, during my days. So it's been all right for me.
So, have you both made like the great escape back to home to sort of relax in now for quarantine, or are you still going back and forth to Bristol, or is that it now? You're both sort of home.
No, we're
No,
both home, I think, for the foreseeable, especially on this kind of 3 week lockdown. I don't know whether it's going to obviously be extended or not.
Mm.
Yeah, we both kind of came back. I think there was something about wanting to kind of get out of the city and back more to where there's more kind of open space and countryside and spend a bit more time at home, I guess. Something about kind of coming back to your family or wherever you feel physically safe, I guess, at the moment.
Safe. You get food
Yeah,
cooked for you. You get a
yeah,
dog. It's like the best
exactly.
scenario you can be in. Yeah, I had
government have
friends
said they're
from.
going to review. They're going to review the lockdown every 3 months, every 3 weeks for the next 6 months. So
Yeah, yeah.
it kind of sounds like it won't be over in 3 months, in 3 weeks.
No.
Um, Maybe in, I don't know. No one knows, do they? That's the thing with it. So that's
No.
the
Yeah, I,
no
I
one.
had a friend who came home from Prague. My brother came home from Sussex, obviously from uni. Um, friends have all literally left where they were. He made these. Ollie went to Canada. He tried to move to Canada for like a year or two, and he had to come back. So it's pulled everyone back to
Mhm,
their home life, which is
mhm,
a good and a bad thing. I don't know. We've made like a dinner rota between our family. So we all
mhm.
cook dinner once a night. It's a small thing, but that's one small positive I've seen already, which has come from the scenario. I mean, how are
Mm.
you guys getting on? Do you see much of each other? Are you sort of stuck in your rooms? What's the sort of scenario in your house?
I think it depends on your personality, really, to how you're coping with it. I think more introverted people naturally kind of have settled into like quarantined life better than people who are perhaps more extroverted and like to go out more. Um, so I kind of enjoyed spending time at home and I suppose the slower pace of life that's come with lockdown. But on the other hand, not being able to see friends and not being able to go about your daily routine like you used to be able to do is quite frustrating. And I think I'm quite anxious about the longer it goes on. I think the more I'll be kind of distressed by the situation and want it to end. Like we're only 1 week into this now, and I think my perspective on it could be quite different if it gets to sort of 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks. I think the frustration within the whole country will start to build by that point.
Mm.
I
Yeah,
think
I've seen a lot. Sorry, Emma. I was going to say I've seen a lot of people on social media saying, you know, I'm bored out of my mind. I don't know what to do. And personally, I'm always been quite a sort of introverted sort of person, so I could happily just crack on and do bits and bobs. And I've got my two brothers at home, but I know for a lot of people now, it's like a struggle to just be stuck. If you're a single child, you're with your parents, you've got no friends you can see. It's like it
Yeah.
is a difficult time for a lot of people. What about how are you getting on, Emma?
it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think this is a really unprecedented situation. You don't have that kind of, like you say, everyone's almost been pulled back to maybe their family homes or, I don't know, it might be kind of like going and living with their partners and they might be in kind of long distance relationships or whatever. I've got a lot of friends and kind of, yeah, family who have kind of come back together in a household, and I guess it's kind of like learning to adjust to not just kind of being indoors more often, well, yeah, most of your time, but also adjusting to living with those kind of family members again and all as adults. And I like your idea about kind of having a dinner rota. Actually, Adam and our dad both really like to cook, so they tend to do a bit more of the cooking. But I think that's something that, and then for me, that really works for me because they both like cooking, and I really like being kind of cooked for because especially when
Don't
I've
we
had
all?
work to do this week, it's kind of nice to kind
Yeah,
of have a focus and then kind of, have someone make dinner for you when you're used to kind of making dinner for yourself most nights. So that's been
yeah.
quite nice. But yeah, I've heard Friday before we went into lockdown, I wasn't even aware of the news. I was still at work, and I went to a bar, and that was the night that they'd said that from that evening, I think it was like at 9 o'clock or something, or 10, they were going to be shutting all kind of bars and restaurants and pubs and clubs. And I was speaking to a waitress, and she was saying that she had to go back to Australia because they were closing pubs, so she no longer had a job, and she wouldn't be able to pay the rent, so she was going to have to go back to Australia. And she said, I've got a boyfriend in the UK, so it's really kind of splitting kind of people in two, but also reuniting people in different kind of ways of living, isn't it? So it's a really strange situation I think we all find ourselves in at the moment.
It is strange. And so for you two right now, do you find yourselves, are you working from home, or are you completely like unemployed as such right now? Or what are your situations with that sort of thing?
We're both working from home.
With my job, it can be done quite remotely anyway. So it's not a huge shift, but obviously the work we can do, I think almost every industry across the board has been affected by this, and mine's no different. You have to adapt to the new situation you're in, and I suppose that's what my company have had to do. So yeah, but I'm working from home, and I can do pretty much everything I need to do from home, 90% of my job, so it hasn't affected me too badly in that way. But obviously you have to get used to making video calls rather than meeting people face to face.
Yeah, your industry is interesting because social media is inherently an online thing. It only existed since the internet has come about. So there's an argument to say that perhaps, you could work exclusively from home. You don't need to live in Bristol. You could do the same role just from your bedroom, essentially. It perhaps could be one positive that comes from this whole pandemic, is that we learn to use this tool of the internet that we don't use enough, maybe.
I think it's important that we don't use the internet to become too sort of recluse, and we don't forget the importance of meeting people face to face, because I do think there is something inherently different about having a conversation with someone face to face rather than on an online platform. But I think maybe we're realizing, could people work remotely more across all industries really, in where it's possible, and does it matter less about are we all together or just communicating generally, Zoom and Skype? Are those basically just as effective about meeting in person are? There's definitely an argument to be made, and I think a lot of people will be making that argument to their companies when this is over. Well, everything worked fine when we were in quarantine, so why can't I work from home more now?
I think it is really interesting, isn't it? It does certainly shine a light on, I think, just the importance of social connection. And I think at the moment, people are really trying to stay kind of connected through new kind of ways, or not necessarily new ways, but ways that they're going to have to rely on more, like Skype or things like Zoom. So I think maybe it does make people realise like how much they do enjoy seeing people face to face, actually. But it's still good to have that alternative of being able to kind of use these new kind of ways of staying in touch and staying connected. Because I think really, the importance is just about staying connected for people, whatever that looks like. And maybe this will shine a light on both that you can kind of stay connected more virtually, but also the importance of, and the enjoyment of connecting kind of face to face, and that there is a difference. It'll be interesting to see what kind of, if perspectives do shift, or if companies do change ways of working as a result of kind of, I guess it's a bit like almost a 3-week, which may go on longer, like a trial of more of a virtual kind of life and way of doing things.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, I think.
Sorry, mate. I was just going to say, like, I was especially sort of excited to have you on, Emma, because of your background, obviously, as a psychologist. Do you, like, from your own perspective, how do you feel that this will affect people on a broad scale in terms of their mental health? Because I've seen a lot of people really sort of struggling just with being alone for a week, myself included. A lot of people sort of struggle to be in these isolated spaces. Do you feel there's going to be a big backlash as such of people needing sort of advice and guidance on how to care for their mental health from your own sort of perspective, of course?
Yeah. So yeah, from my own perspective, so I'm a trainee psychologist. I'm in training at the moment to become a psychologist, and I think at the moment it's really difficult to say, kind of from my own perspective, what kind of the after effects and impact of coronavirus will be on people's mental health. I guess what we're hearing at the moment is that, yeah, some people are struggling with loneliness and isolation, and we do know that can contribute to people feeling low or having difficulties in their mental health. And also we know that, there's worry and anxiety because there's lots of uncertainty around, and not just about health and the coronavirus. I guess there's uncertainty about kind of school and exams and jobs and finances. So, and uncertainty around kind of how long this lockdown is going to go on for. So it's a really kind of unprecedented situation that, that holds a lot of kind of uncertainty and a lot of unknowns at the moment. And I think, it's difficult to know, will there be kind of more kind of more of an impact on mental health afterwards, or is it more kind of prominent at this time? But I think, all I would really say from kind of my perspective is that whatever people are feeling at this time, whether it's kind of anxiety, worry, sadness, despair, disbelief, if people are struggling, or if people are actually finding that they're finding this quite a positive experience and they're maybe enjoying kind of a slower pace of life or being at home a bit more, whether there's more of a positive outlook on it or, more of a struggle with it. I think whatever people feel, it's completely understandable and completely normal. That, there's no right or wrong way to feel in this situation, or any situation really, but, it's just so unprecedented. So I think time will tell really how people kind of, if there will be kind of more mental health difficulties and referrals as a result of this. But yeah, certainly I can imagine it's a period of time where people's mental health will be tested a little bit more, especially if some of those coping strategies, maybe it's really important for people to kind of go out and connect with other people as part of something that helps them to kind of cope, and some of those coping strategies might be a bit kind of challenged or made a bit harder given the kind of current circumstances and situation.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing I've noticed from my personal experience is, for example, having something like football taken away from you, it's such a small thing in the grand scheme of things, but just that every weekend you have that one thing to go and watch and enjoy with your friends. When that's taken away, you do feel the impact. I know a lot of my mates, a lot of lads especially, have felt like having football taken away is like this huge blow to the gut, which sounds sort of hyperbolic and over the top, but it is like, it's a big part of a lot of people's lives, I know, Adam, you're like probably on the same sort of wavelength with that as well.
I just think that the key thing to remember with this is because everyone has a different life, it's so dependent on situation to how you're going to react to this. So obviously in every aspect of life you look at, sort of generational, the older generation are likely to be more worried about this, generally speaking, than the younger generation because it could have a more severe impact on them. People who work for an airline are likely to be more worried about this than people who work in social media and industries like that who can work at home. So I think it's affected everyone on that level of change. That's the universal thing across the board. Pretty much everyone, because of lockdown, has had to deal with that element of change. So we've had football taken away from us, and that's a real blow. But we have the other thing, we can work from home, we can see our family more. It's a kind of unique time to live through. But for someone older or for someone whose job's in danger, they're probably going to be feeling this really severely, and that will be impacting their mental health worse. And people with general anxiety, and other people who are in a situation where this isn't going to have as drastic effect on them probably are going to be able to cope with it better. So for me, it's like my job is hopefully secure. The longer this goes on, obviously the more businesses are going to be challenged. We might be heading for a recession. Who knows what will come with that? But, with my situation, it's okay. It's a level of change. For some people, this is extremely serious. So for me, it's those things of missing going to the pub with your friends, missing football, like you've said. I mean, they're huge blows for me. But at the moment, they haven't affected my mental health or anything like that terribly, because my overall situation's okay. But I think for other people, this is probably a really, really challenging time. So yeah, it's interesting that's what I was going to add, is that the situation you're in definitely depends on how severely you're going to feel the impact of this quarantine and this virus.
Have you guys got any older relatives in who you speak to in quarantine, or how are they coping? Because it's quite their situation is so unique compared to our situation, because they have to be in isolation for 12 weeks, I believe, 3 months.
Yeah, so I've got so we both have well, obviously because we're brother and sister, we've got the same grandparents. We've both got 2 grandmothers, and both of them are in social isolation, and yeah, I think that's a really unique challenge for older people. It's a unique challenge for everyone, really, but I think they probably don't have so much kind of access to modern technology. I guess they have the access, but in terms of both of our own grandparents don't know how to use, the technology so much, even though they've got kind of computers and they could have Skype and they could have access to that. Their confidence in using that ability and their ability to use that is kind of limited. So I'm trying to maybe phone a bit more often and use kind of those, like, I guess, more traditional ways of staying in contact remotely with my grandparents. But also I think, it's just a unique kind of time for them, because actually, where maybe, and I'm generalizing here, but maybe the younger generation kind of have been more used to kind of having food deliveries and that kind of thing. This is quite a strange time, I think, for older people who are used to kind of maybe going out for their shopping. And I know, like, one of my nans is extremely social, loves going to kind of bingo, darts, pub quizzes, that kind of thing. So really does impact on kind of their social experience, obviously, of the world.
Their anxiety. I am now, I'd be incredibly anxious about this, because for us, catching it, 99% going to recover. For them, the odds, you still probably will recover, but the odds aren't as good. So, they have to cope with both the anxiety of, A, if I get it, it could be really problematic for me, and B, I have to socially isolate for much longer than our generation will, 12 weeks, which is a huge length of time, 3 months. So it's those 2 challenges that make being older and our grandparents are having to face. And I think, there was a level from my nan where she was really kind of reluctant to have to do this. But it's one of those things that can't really be stopped, unfortunately. And maybe I should call her more, and maybe we should all contact our grandparents more and try and help them out.
Yeah, it would definitely be a good lesson to take from all of this. I was just going to ask you, Emma, in your job role, do you get many older people? Was it mostly younger adults and people?
I guess it depends where you work and what service you work in. So as part of our training, we work across the lifespan. So I have worked before with adults and older adults, but a lot of my work prior to training and also on training has been with children and young people and families. So yes, there will be kind of psychologists out there that do have contact with older people. But I guess I also wanted to say, it's not just grandparents and older people that I know are kind of going into social isolation for a longer period of time, so for 12 weeks, but I've also got friends with long-term underlying health conditions, chronic conditions, and I think it's really tough for them as well to have to self-isolate for 12 weeks, and the anxiety I think they probably feel, just by being kind of considered like an at-risk, population, is quite anxiety-provoking, really. So I think it is the older generation, but also there are a lot of other people living in quite a lot of kind of fear, I guess. I don't want to put words and feelings into people's kind of mouths, but I just know some of my friends have had to go into social kind of isolation because of underlying health conditions as well. And I think it's important to kind of recognise that group as well as older people who are also having to social isolate kind of longer.
Goes back to that
I've
situation.
also got a friend who... Sorry, go on, mate.
So the connection went a bit there. I just think what Emma said, it goes back to that situation thing. Everyone's going through a different experience with this. And the severity depends on, work and health conditions and age and all those kind of different factors to how you're coping with it.
Yeah. How are you guys getting through a day? What are your daily activities other than work? Do you find yourself just on Twitter scrolling, or what have you picked up any new hobbies to keep you going? What's the sort of day to day?
Well, personally, I mean, Twitter scrolling is kind of my job. So
That's interesting. Yeah.
I've always been a person who likes just going on walks. So I've been using my Boris approved exercise every day. And I've used my Samsung Health app and tried to get 10,000 steps in a day. So it's kind of set myself a little challenge to keep myself sane. I really miss weird things like being able to stop at the coffee shop and having a coffee on my walk and stuff like that, because that was part of my routine. But yeah, definitely I'm appreciating I'm gonna take every day. I'm gonna take the time to go for an hour-long walk, basically, and that's the activity I'm doing. And then I suppose the other 23 hours I am at home, which is pretty weird, but it's the times we live in. But I'm getting the walks in. That's what I'm doing.
Good.
I think personally for me, I'm actually, because I don't spend a lot of time at home these days, I'm at the moment, given that we're only a week into this, really enjoying that kind of more time at home. And what I'm trying to do is, I mean, I don't check the news and scroll through Twitter and that kind of thing too often. I tend to look at kind of the beginning of the day. I'll just be looking through, BBC News or Twitter, and at the end of the day. But in the middle of the day, I'm really focused on work, to be honest, even at the weekends now with uni work. So I really have a focus of kind of what I need to be getting on with. But I will also go on a walk. We've got our dog, so I really enjoy walking him, and often walking, because we're self-isolating as a house, or on lockdown as a house, we can go out with each other. So we kind of go on walks and have a chat. And so I'm enjoying that. And also I think I'm just trying to build some breaks into my day. So normally I wouldn't do this because I guess I'm normally still at work at 5 o'clock, but I'm trying to kind of go downstairs and watch the chase. Try and in a few things maybe to the day. So that's kind of how I'm getting on with it at the moment. But whether that, I'm guessing it will probably change the longer this goes on. And the other thing I'm trying to do is really keep in touch with people. So arrange kind of Skype calls and that kind of thing.
I was just thinking, I bet you there's dogs all over the world who feel sport rotten because they've got their family home all day, going for walk after walk. They don't know what the hell's going on. So yeah, moving on from this, it's hard to judge, but do you think the positives will come from the things we have to learn because of this pandemic hitting the whole world, essentially?
I think times of crisis generally bring out the best in people and the worst in people. I think there's been loads of positive stories about, for example, we built this NHS Nightingale Hospital, and we've kind of done that in an unprecedentedly quick time. Loads of people helping their neighbours and being part of schemes and helping charities, and so that there will definitely be positives from this. Out of a mainly, I'd say, negative situation, which will bring the best out of some people and the worst out of some people. But I think maybe because it's such a crisis, people might form connections with people who they haven't got in touch with for ages, like their neighbours and people like that, and help them out. And maybe they'll keep those relationships going after the crisis is over. Maybe it reminds everyone of the importance of, your family and the importance of socialising when it's taken away from you. And maybe new practices will be evolved in businesses from quarantine. Maybe video conferencing stuff will be improved. Maybe we can all take lessons about how it's important to kind of protect the environment because the environment's improved. So yeah, I'd say it's probably going to be a negative couple of months maybe, but yeah, some elements of positivity will hopefully come from it.
I think I'll just search it. We always search for positives because you need to look for them in times like this where it is so negative and there is so much bad news and suffering around the world. Okay, I've got a few questions actually. Let me get them up on Instagram. Mainly for Emma. Sorry, Adam. But might be one for you.
Slightly more.
So this is quite a broad one, but feel free to answer it, Emma, however you like. So, what do you feel is the most effective way to maintain mental health at this time? So, like any activities people can do just day to day to keep them sort of ticking over in a positive way, I suppose.
I mean, I think whatever works for people kind of normally. I know that we're in unprecedented and different times, so a bit like what I was saying before, that, you know, some of our coping strategies might not be, and things that kind of support our mental health might not be possible at the moment. But if you can find the ways to do the things that you normally do that help you, I would say try and kind of stick with those, if it's possible, or if there's kind of new ways of doing that. I think a little bit like I was saying before as well, just that importance of kind of staying connected with other people. So to talk about kind of the situation that we're all in and the adjustment and how we're, you know, thoughts and feelings around that. And if we can talk to other people who, you know, we trust and that we have good relationships with, and we can connect with others, friends, family, loved ones, I think it's kind of that's important. But I think also, as well as kind of talking about coronavirus and adjustment, I think also just having just those general check-ins, chats that, you know, talk about other things as well. You know, I've seen some great things like people doing, I'm going to get this wrong, like Bongos Bingo or something online, with friends, house party family quizzes or wider quizzes that are kind of being run on social media. So I think staying connected is really important. I mean, also I would say there's kind of getting that balance between, obviously people want a sense of kind of what's happening, or most people do. And so there's a balance between staying informed, but also that balance between staying informed, but where if the balance tips and you feel that you're accessing too much kind of information, seeing too many headlines where the anxiety rises, I think it's trying to keep a check on that. So I think, I mean, a little bit like I was saying, maybe trying to check at certain times of the day. So it might be at the beginning of the day, you might kind of check in with any headlines and updates, or you might just watch the kind of the government briefings each day. But I think, yeah, trying to get a kind of balance on how much media and headlines people are consuming. And I think also checking that information is reliable, so going to like the government website or the NHS kind of website, and also check kind of who you're following on social media, and like notifications, because we can kind of, you know, we can't control what's happening in this global pandemic, but we can control, I guess, kind of what information is constantly popping up. So if we're finding that we're following people where you know, they might be saying things that we're finding unhelpful at the moment, I think unfollowing them, or if there's particularly kind of newspapers or things that we're seeing with sensationalist headlines, trying to unfollow them and remove any pop-ups from your phone about, you know, notifications that just come up maybe from BBC News about coronavirus. Because if you're actually engaged in a different activity and getting really involved in that, and then a pop-up comes up and, oh yeah, you go back and you remember that kind of and what's happening. So I think getting a bit of a kind of check-in on what and when we're looking at kind of media around this. And I think also, you know, I'm aware of there's some websites where you can see kind of death tolls around the country, and, you know, how helpful is it to look at that information versus just kind of more general, what's the advice at the moment and what is happening. But, you know, it's really hard to kind of avoid the news and information, and I'm not saying necessarily avoid it. I don't think that's necessarily helpful either. But yeah, it's just that balance between staying informed but not being, you know, constantly checking, and to the point where it's really raising our anxiety. I have made some notes that are gone.
I was just going to say, being part of the creative community as such, you know, I work as a designer. All creative people right now are just making stuff, whether it's art, whether it's new websites, which is great. But when you see it happening, you feel the anxiety that you should be making active use of this time, almost as if it's a free chance to really work harder. But I don't think it is. I think that's kind of like a dangerous sort of way to look at it.
Well, one thing my note is definitely for people to not be hard on themselves at this time. So if they are, you know, struggling to adjust, or they're feeling a certain way, and I think there's a lot of pressure to, get into a structure, get into a routine. And I think that can absolutely be helpful. But yeah, people might feel like they need to use this time to be really ultra productive, or, really stick to a rigid regime where I wake up at this time and I eat this and I go out for my daily exercise at this time. And I think it's useful to get some kind of structure and some kind of routine in your day. But I think not being hard on yourself if you can't stick to it, or if it needs adjusting, because actually, I'm certainly thinking about, parents who have now got their children back at home maybe, and they're trying to work and also teach their kids. And I'm just thinking, so you might initially start off, okay, well, this is how we might kind of plan our day and plan our time, but that might not actually be possible or feasible, the more you go on. And I think so people being kind of flexible to allow for some kind of change in that routine that they may initially kind of set up. And I think also, people not comparing to others in this, and in terms of how they're coping and how they're spending their time in their day and how productive they're being. I think we probably do spend or put far too much value on productivity. And I think just, you do what works for you and find the way that works for you and your family, and don't be too hard on yourself if you feel that you're not sticking to routines or not doing, these workouts that people are putting out online, or whatever it might be. I just think whatever's working for you right now and helps, and just kind of, if anyone comes up with a kind of a strategy or something that's working for them, or something that they try out, just ask, is this helping me, I guess, or has that helped to kind of alleviate some of my feelings if they're a bit tricky, and if they do, then carry on doing them, and if they don't, that's okay. Not everything works for everyone, so whatever works for people at this time, I think.
Okay, I've got one more question, which is kind of quite a good one to end on. So it says, what should someone do if they don't get along with their spouse/family? Now, I don't know how well you guys are getting on. I can't really be the judge of that, but you can't escape, obviously, in this time. You're sort of stuck in your four walls of your house. But it's from both of you. What do you do if things are getting a bit heated? You can't really leave. Do you just sort of put some headphones on? What would be your approach to that?
Do you have any thoughts, Adam?
How do you get on? I mean, is it good?
Well, family's kind of strangely peaceful, I suppose. Maybe not strange. But, well, I mean, it hasn't been too bad, really. I suppose it depends on it. Like we've said before, it depends on your situation, doesn't it? And some people are probably absolutely hating spending lots of time with their family. There's things like in Bristol, I like to cook for myself every day, and when I'm here, my dad likes to cook, and it's a bit annoying, but I can deal with it. I miss, I have that thing of I miss being able to go to my girlfriend's house and see her, and I miss her coming here. So that's difficult for me, but it's not too bad. It's having that independence back there. I'm 24, so I like to have that independence just generally, to be able to go out and want at all times, which is frustrating, but it's not really my family's fault. So I'm finding it quite easy, but I don't know what I'd write for someone who is finding it problematic.
Imagine some households probably like knowing each other constantly.
I can imagine. I mean, go on a long walk. Go on a 3-hour walk.
Yeah. Definitely.
Play some online chess, or engage your brain, try to forget about it.
Yeah, it's a hard question, and I think, even despite kind of the line of work that I'm in, that's why I passed it to Adam. And I think, again, it's because there's just no right or wrong. And I think for some people it'd be really hard staying indoors with partners or their family, and especially if, like we say, kind of social situations have changed, and normally you live apart and now you find yourself living together, or normally you at least get out the majority of the day, and now you're just around each other 24/7. So it is a bit of a test, I think, of relationships. But like Adam says, I think you've just got to find out what works for kind of you, as I was saying a little bit before. So like Adam was saying, staying in touch with your girlfriend on social media or through kind of FaceTime, that kind of thing. But I think for other people that are maybe feeling that their space is kind of impacted on a little bit, and they're not used to spending so much time around each other, if there is some way of kind of creating that space or distance, and maybe if you work in different rooms, if that's possible, or get out of the house, go for kind of walks or things, or just and have conversations around negotiating that kind of I guess where are we going to work, and how are we going to create space for ourselves and time for ourselves as well as time together. And the other thing I think I'll do, Tom, is I'll maybe we'll look into some of this kind of other stuff and think about kind of some links and support charities and organisations for people in certain kind of maybe specific situations that maybe then you can post along with wherever you're posting this to. I'm not quite sure. So I can send some links, and then maybe there might be some things that kind of cover some more relational aspects of kind of coping with this current situation.
Yeah, that would be great. And without going into detail, because I'm going to wrap it up now, for people listening, if they've got this far, we're going to be launching, obviously, the mental health podcast between us three, hopefully in the coming months, once we get out of this whole scenario. But so me, Adam, and Emma will be talking more about mental health and sort of anything around that sort of topic, really. But yeah, thank you both for coming on to Connect. It's good to see you. Shame is not in the King and Queen, but hopefully soon we'll be back. Yeah. Stay safe. Yeah. I'll speak to you both soon. All right.
All right. Take care, Tom. Thanks.
All right.